Welcome to another bite-sized learning of Terraform. Today we're going to be looking at Terraform provider version constraints. This is really important to understand because a lot of times in an enterprise space, you'll be using lots and lots of Terraform modules, and sometimes they use the same providers, but they're locked to different versions of things. The way that Terraform versioning works is Terraform, when you run a Terraform init, it takes a look at all of the version dependencies and it tries to find the most compatible match for any given provider. So if I use, for example, the random provider and I use it at the root level and down in a module, and I'm using some new and enhanced feature, and I have the version pinned to a much newer version in my submodule, it's going to try to reconcile those differences together until it finds a version that meets all constraints across all references of that provider. So when you're writing modules or you're referencing providers, it's very important to mean what you say when you set a given version for a provider. I have an example here on the screen that I'm going to demonstrate with some uh, commented out resources or commented out attributes that I'll demonstrate for different ways you can set version. I have a versions.tf file where I have my Terraform block, required providers, and I only have the random provider defined. I went out to the documentation of the random provider and I just looked up some of the old versions, right? So like 3.6.0 got released 6 days ago or 17 days ago. 3.5.1 was 8 months ago. 3.5.0 was 8 months ago. 3.4.3 was a year ago. So we'll kind of be playing with these given versions of the random provider. And I don't know the change log for them. I don't really care for the purpose of this example, but understand that new versions of a provider release new functionality or bug fixes for existing resources. So something in here changes with each release of the provider, and you may want to leverage that functionality for whatever you're trying to accomplish in your module. So going back to the example, um, the easiest way is just to specifically state, I want this version. You can either provide the equal sign explicitly in the string, or you can just specify the version with no operator, and it means the same thing. It says I want this specific version, and when you run a Terraform plan or a Terraform init, excuse me, it's going to go grab the specific version that was asked for, 3.5.1, and it's going to generate the lock file. I'm going to delete that lock file, and we're going to go on to the next example. The next operator is what's called a pessimistic match operator. It is using the tilde and an arrow sign, and what this does is it allows the rightmost version to change, with this being the minimum version, and it'll allow it to shift for any numeric version number in this specific spot. So if I have 3.6.0, me saying 3.0 pessimistic match, it's saying it's going to allow 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and it'll pick the latest version of that minor release series. So, if I did 3.0, it's going to pick 3.6.0 is the latest available 3.6 iteration. I'm going to demonstrate that real quick with another Terraform init. So I run an init, and this is going to pull 3.6.0. Now, if I were to set this so I want a pessimistic match where I allow a float on the rightmost digit of the 3.5 series. So this says I want the latest 3.5 that you have. That's essentially what it's saying. But I don't want 3.6. I don't want you to go to 3.6. This particular setting would make that happen. So I'll again reset. I will run my Terraform init. And it tells you exactly what it's doing. Finding versions matching this, it found 3.5.1. That meets the constraints. That's the newest version that meets the constraints, so it's going to accept that. Another way that you can do this is you can use the not equals. Not equals allows you to exclude versions, and this is compatible with the comma separated. So this one is not compatible with commas. All the rest of these are compatible with comma separation, so you can get really specific about the version that you want to allow if you need to be that granular for whatever reason. Usually you use this not equals to exclude some bug. It's occasionally true that some providers get released with bugs and you want to just exclude that version explicitly for whatever reason. This is the way that you do it. So I will show this. And this is going to pick 3.5.1 because that's the latest one that matches this constraint that I've given. You can get really complex with your constraints where you have things like comma separated and you use these other operators like greater than, less than or equal to, greater than and equal to, not equal to, etc. So what I have here is an example where I want to have less than 3.6, greater than and equal to 3.4, not equal to 3.5.1. What this should pick is 3.5.0. So I'll run an init and let's see what happens. Oh, hold on just a second here. Here, I'll take off this not real quick because I don't have time to debug this message. So we'll just let this float up to 3.5.1 is what it should pick. I'll get rid of the lock file. We'll run the init again. There we go. So 3.5.1 is what got selected from this. And then the last one is kind of redundant, I guess, but this is just demonstrating greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, etc. So if I were to run this, this would actually select 3.6.1 or 3.6.0 because that is the newest version of the module. It doesn't just pick the next greatest, it picks the newest version that meets the constraint. So I'll demonstrate that here. So 3.6.0 was selected. Lots of different ways that you can kind of orchestrate this. It depends from provider to provider. The normal recommendation is that you explicitly pin. There are some cases for the more popular providers like the AWS provider or the Azure provider where you may want to use this major version float where you can, like in the case of the AWS provider, you want to float it to the 5 release series is the current release series, and there are changes to that all the time where there are just a slew of new attributes and bug fixes and resources. So sometimes it makes sense to just take all minor releases for a major release. Sometimes you want to pin it explicitly. It just really depends on what your module needs to do, your project needs to do. If you appreciated this video, I ask that you give it a like and a subscribe. And I'll be back with more Terraform bite-sized learning content in the very near future. Have an excellent day.